for 20 years. Before that, I taught at the Graduate School of Education at Harvard University for 10 years. My PhD is in anthropology, but I've, for the last 30, 40 years, I've specialized in research methods, starting mainly with qualitative research and more recently with mixed method research, which is combining qualitative and quantitative. Since a lot of what you're asking about is field observations, I just want to say that the most important thing about doing field observations is you're going into somebody else's space, their setting, and you need to understand how they might feel about that, what you need to do to make them comfortable with your presence there, to make it clear what it is that you want to learn from visiting them and watching and taking notes on what they do and how they can be most helpful to you in doing that, and address any concerns they have about your presence there and what you will do with the information that you get. So that's just sort of a basic introduction to something that applies to all field observations, short of ones in which you're totally unobtrusive. You're looking at through a one-way mirror and they're not aware of your presence, which is a different situation entirely. Okay. Okay, the first question you had was, how can observers avoid the effect of their presence on users' behavior, i.e. observe the user's natural behavior? The basic answer is you can't avoid the effect of your presence. Your presence will inevitably influence what goes on. What you want to do is to minimize the negative, from your point of view, effects of that presence. That is, to avoid having them doing things differently from what it is that you need to understand, either because they're afraid of that you'll find something disreputable or negative about what they're doing, and to make it clear to them what it is you want to know, and why. So to do that, I hope that all of these people have some idea about the people that they would be observing, and you have to try to anticipate as best you can how the participants might respond to this, and make it clear what they would like you to do to avoid problems. And there's no formula, there's no cookbook for doing this. You just have to be very sensitive to their possible reactions to your presence, and to make it clear to them that you want to help them be able to do a better job or to improve the product that they're using. Okay. The next question you asked was, how long do observational field visits last? It depends. And that's going to be my answer to a lot of the questions. It depends. I'm known for that. When I retired from George Mason, people made up a button that said, it depends for me. So you normally know no more than an hour. So but it depends very much on how intensive that observation is going to be, what the activity is that you're observing. I mean, some of the activities are not going to last more than an hour. And if you are going more than an hour, that's, it needs to be clear to the participants how long you hope to observe. It's part of negotiating your presence there. The next question, should the observer list the items, actions, and behaviors he or she will observe before the field visit? Yes, as a tentative checklist of the things that you want to make sure that you don't forget to notice when you're there. But that's always subject to change. You may see things or hear things that you hadn't anticipated that you then have to respond to. And the other issue here is to what extent you are simply observing, that is, not interfering or communicating with them at all while the observation is going on, and to what extent it can be an interactive activity. Observing group activities tends to be non-interactive because asking questions or asking for clarification can be disruptive of the activity itself. If you're observing an individual doing something, then it may make more sense to be able to ask questions and to say, okay, tell me why you're doing that, and what were you thinking as that was going on. So it's like all qualitative research. You start out with some tentative questions and possible things that you want to find out about, but you have to be flexible based on what you see and change course if necessary. So that's answering the second question you had, which is, do observers ask questions during a field observation? What's your advice for first-time observers? I think I covered a lot of that. What they need to know to conduct a successful observation. What should they need to do? What should they avoid doing to conduct a successful observation? On the last of those questions, you may not know in advance what you should avoid doing. So you have to be sensitive to how they're responding to your presence. If they start seeming uncomfortable about what you're doing, then you need to address that and adapt what you're doing. The next question, how important is it to observe and document users' body language and gestures? Do you need a camera to capture body language? It depends. It depends on what it is that you're trying to learn. In most field observations, you don't do that. First, because it's more technically cumbersome to try to be recording. You've got to set up equipment. That in itself is intrusive. People may be much more sensitive about what they're doing if they know they're being recorded. And also, the video data takes a much longer time to analyze unless you're just using it as a backup to confirm what it is that you noticed. So in general, no, I wouldn't record unless there's a very good reason to do it. To observing body language, it depends. Sometimes body language may be important. It's particularly important as a way of seeing how they're reacting to your presence. If body language indicates that they're uncomfortable with you being there, that's a sign that you may not be observing what they would normally do if you're present, if you weren't there. I think that's all the questions that I had that you had sent me. I don't know if I left any out. Are there any others that you want to ask at this point?
Not really. Yeah, you covered you gave first-time observers a good understanding maybe of what they should expect, what to prepare for before they go and observe field visits. I think that's it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
One other thing, if you can cut the video, but I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
I mentioned a number of sources. The main one that I would recommend to them is
Sure.
Corinne Glesney's book, Becoming Qualitative Researchers. She has a chapter in there on observations. That's about, it's very basic, but it's probably as much as you want to give them at this point, rather than hitting them with a whole bunch of articles on the finer points of observing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maxwell.
Sure. Good luck.
Take care.
And get back to me if you have any questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.